Belle Gunness can lay serious claim to being the first female serial killer of modern times. She was the archetypal Black Widow killer, a woman who repeatedly attracted husbands and other suitors, and promptly murdered them for their money, while others like Nanny Doss were relatively timid murderers who would wait years for the chance to poison their latest husband. Belle was happy to dispatch most of her suitors almost immediately, and if they did not care to take a drop of cyanide, she was quite willing to terminate their prospects with the blow from an axe or hammer. After all, at a strongly built 280 pounds, there were not too many men able to overpower her. Belle Gunness may also have a second claim to fame. There are very few serial killers who have succeeded in evading the law even after being identified. The Hungarian Belle Gunness was one. Norwegian-born Belle Gunness was another. Belle Gunness was born Brynhild Paulsdatter Storset on the 11th of November 1859 in the Norwegian fishing village of Selbu. Her parents had a small farm there, and Belle's father also moonlighted as a conjurer. Allegedly, Belle, in her youth, would appear alongside him as a tightrope walker, and it is certainly true to say that she walked a tightrope for the rest of her life. In 1883, her older sister Anna, who had emigrated to Chicago, invited Belle to join her in the United States. Belle jumped at the chance of a new life and soon arrived in Chicago. The following year, she married a fellow immigrant, Mads Sorensen. They lived together happily enough for the next decade or so. They failed to conceive children, but instead fostered 3 girls, Jenny, Myrtle, and Lucy. The only dramas to strike these hard-working immigrants were the regular fires that dogged their businesses. Twice their houses burnt down, and in 1897, a confectionery store they ran also succumbed to fire. Thankfully, each time they were well insured. Insurance also served Belle well when, on the 30th of July, 1900, Mads Sorensen died suddenly at home, suffering from what was officially listed as heart failure, but strangely showing all the symptoms of strychnine poisoning. Amazingly enough, he died on the day that one life insurance policy elapsed and another one started, so his grieving widow was able to claim on both policies. With her $8,500 windfall, Belle decided to start a new life. She moved her family to the rural town of LaPorte, Indiana, a place popular with Scandinavian immigrants, and soon married again, this time to Peter Gunness, a fellow Norwegian. Sadly, this marriage was not to last as long as her first. In 1903, Peter died in a tragic accident after a sausage grinder allegedly fell on his head. If some observed that it looked as if a hammer blow might have caused the head wound, the grieving and pregnant widow's tears were enough to quieten them. Once again, there was an insurance payment, this time for $4,000. Belle never married again, though not, it appears, for want of trying. She placed regular advertisements in the Norwegian language press's Lonely Hearts columns. Describing herself as a comely widow, she advertised for men ready to support their amorous advances with a solid cash investment in their future lives together. She received many replies, and several of these suitors actually arrived in LaPorte, cash or bank books in hand. They would be seen around town for a day or two, tell their loved ones they were preparing to marry a rich widow, and then they would disappear. They were not the only people around Belle to disappear. Her foster daughter Jenny also vanished. Belle told neighbors that she had gone to a finishing school in California. Farmhands seemed to go missing on the Gunness farm on a regular basis. As far as the community as a whole was concerned, however, Belle Gunness was a model citizen who had had some very bad luck. This view seemed to be compounded once and for all when, on the 28th of April 1908, Belle's house caught fire. Firefighters were unable to stop the blaze in time, and the bodies of 2 of Belle's 3 children were found in the rubble, along with an adult female body assumed to be that of Belle herself, though identification was difficult as the body had been decapitated. The beheaded body was clear evidence that this was no accident but murder. The police immediately arrested an obvious suspect, local handyman Ray Lamphere, who had had an on-off relationship with Belle, but had lately fallen out with her and threatened to burn her house down. That might have been the end of the matter if investigators had not continued digging around the site, looking for the corpse's missing head. They did not find the head, but they did find 14 other corpses buried around the farm, mostly in the hog pen. Among those they were able to identify were 2 handymen, foster daughter Jenny, and 5 of the hopeful suitors. The remainder were mostly presumed to be other unidentified suitors. It was horribly clear that Belle Gunness was no ordinary widow, but a vicious serial killer. More alarm bells rang when it was discovered that some of the bodies recovered from the fire had cyanide in their stomachs. Rumors immediately began to spread that the adult female corpse was not Belle. These were partially quashed a couple of weeks later when her dental bridge and 2 teeth, looking suspiciously untouched by fire, were found in the rubble. Some accepted this as definitive evidence that Belle was dead. Others saw it as simply a final act of subterfuge. The prosecution of Ray Lamphere went ahead, but the jury expressed its doubts as to whether Belle was really dead by finding the handyman guilty only of arson and not of murder. Sightings of Belle Gunness began almost immediately and continued in the ensuing years. Most of them were obviously wrong, and to this day, the true story of the United States' first known female serial killer remains shrouded in mystery.